Hello everyone and welcome to Felix's Space Time. In today's video, I have an interview with Reid Wiseman, the commander of the Artemis II mission. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on here for an interview today. For those who might not know you, could you tell everyone a bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Reid Wiseman, currently an astronaut with NASA living in Houston, Texas. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Really loved trains and planes, basically anything that would move that was a large piece of machinery. I went to college at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute up in Troy, New York, and studied engineering. I joined the Navy. I flew with the Navy for about 12 years before I got hired by NASA and then moved to Houston in 2009. It's been an awesome ride.
Amazing. So today's interview is mainly about the Artemis mission. What was it like when you first found out, and how did you find out that you would command the first US human mission back to the moon since Apollo 17?
When you let all that settle the way you just said that, it has a lot more emotion than it did at the time when it was occurring. But the crew assignment process was very similar to all of them, where your boss calls you into a room. They usually write something on the schedule that's not at all related to being assigned to a mission. So I was being asked about an issue with a spacecraft on orbit. So I didn't even really show up to the meeting in person. I kind of showed up a little bit late, actually a lot bit late, and I actually just zoomed in. But there, when the camera came on, I saw my boss's boss, and I saw Christina and Victor both sitting in the room as well, and they both shown up late for the same exact reasons. Like, this thing it was a blip on our schedule. I'm not sure if that really makes sense, but none of us really knew what was going on. And then our boss said, "Hey, we want you guys to fly around the moon on Artemis II," and that's a pretty awesome moment. And then, like, the gravity of it starts to hit you, and it really hits you over months, and it still is. I still haven't even let it really sink in. It'll sink in when the solid rocket motors fire and we're on our way.
Amazing. So this will be your second mission to space. So you're relatively new to kind of flying to space. Has this made training for this mission a little harder than it would for your crewmates who have flown a few more times?
Each of us on this mission, except for Jeremy, he's a rookie. Each of us has flown one time. Each of us have flown to the International Space Station. Christina and I flew on a Russian Soyuz rocket, excuse me, and Victor flew on the first long duration mission with SpaceX's Crew 1 on a SpaceX Dragon. So we each have about the same level of experience on launching, landing, and living in space. Christina was up there for, I think, 328 days, so she's had a bit more time in space than Victor and I have. But overall, what I really like about our crew is we're not too senior and we're not too junior, and we really pull on all of us. Victor has launched from Kennedy Space Center, so anything dealing with launching, landing in the US, we really rely very heavily on his expertise and knowledge. And then for the rest of it, we pull in people in the office who have flown on space shuttle, flown on other vehicles, and we have our own knowledge, so we work really well together.
Amazing. So what kind of training for Artemis II have you started, and what's yet to come?
A lot of our training so far has been maybe I don't even know what you would expect for spaceflight training, but it's been a lot of academics, a lot of time in a classroom, multiple weeks, just really learning about the Orion spacecraft in particular. That is the part of this vehicle that we will take around the moon. And then a fair amount of information on the European service module, which is the propulsion section that will power us to the moon. And then to a little bit lesser degree, but still pretty in-depth, about the Space Launch System, which is the large orange core stage and the two solid rocket motors on the side that have heritage in the space shuttle. So it's been a lot of classroom activity. And then we've been doing a little bit more of what I would call suited training, mock-up training, where we're getting into a medium fidelity Orion spacecraft. It's not the one we're going to launch in, but it's a training version of it. And we're just learning, how do we operate inside this vehicle? How do we configure it? Where do we need? Jeremy and I just this morning were learning about how do we configure the routers to send imagery down to the ground. We were in the spacecraft. We were plugging in all the different converters, the power systems, and learning how to do that process. So we're getting into that more hands-on period. And then a little bit of it has been really hands-on. We just last week were out with the US Navy off the coast of San Diego, California. We were at sea. We were in a spaceship trainer that resembles Orion, and we had our Navy divers coming in helicopters, pulling us out of the spacecraft, getting us back to the medical facilities on the ship so that we can be transported back to Houston. And that was an end-to-end from the moment we splash down until the moment our mission is really over and we're back on dry land. We just practice that with the entire team that will be doing it for real. So as we get closer to launch, it'll become much more hands-on, a lot of simulator time working with mission control. But that gives you a good idea of what we've been doing.
Amazing. And you kind of talked about training in an Orion capsule. How much of the kind of the launch, the orbiting around the moon and coming back to Earth, how much of that is done by the capsule itself, the computer, and how much is done by the people who fly in it?
Well, it's we just flew Artemis I out into the lunar environment, and it performed flawlessly, and there were no humans on board. So you know that vehicle can do this entire mission without us there. That is not the point of our mission. We know that this vehicle is lunar ready and lunar capable. What we are going to do in this mission is make sure that this vehicle is ready for crews to go get into a SpaceX Starship and land on the surface of the moon, operate on the surface of the moon, start building out Gateway. So our actual role will be a large amount of manual flying. We will do some actual physical manual piloting of the spacecraft, actually flying it. We will do a lot of manual burn targeting. So going into the computers in like a degraded state and telling the spacecraft where we want it to go next as we're going out to the moon. But we'll also do the habitability stuff. How's the toilet work? How's the exercise device work? How is it for 4 people to sleep in here? Can we sleep? Or is it going to be too loud, too weird, too small? But all that stuff, we're just going to go wring this thing out. We're going to get all the way down to the nitty gritty detail, of introducing oxygen, nitrogen into the cabin with the manual valves. All that stuff should be automated on a normal mission, but we're going to try to do all the manual capabilities and make sure the vehicle's ready for the next crew.
Wonderful. Can you tell me a bit about the goal of Artemis II, the science you'll be conducting, anything specific you're looking forward to?
That's a big question. We could spend an hour on that question alone. But really, when I look at Artemis II, the success of Artemis II will be measured by our friends building Gateway and walking on the surface of the moon. If we can take the Orion part and make sure this vehicle is ready and hand it off to our colleagues who are going to go walk on the moon, that is mission success for us. The other part of this for mission success is getting the ground teams ready for humans in deep space again. We have spent the last 20 years in low Earth orbit, the last 50 years in low Earth orbit, and we're really good at operating the International Space Station, conducting science, resupply missions. 4 of my colleagues just launched last night on a Crew Dragon. So we're getting really good at that. It is very different when you're 250,000 miles away from planet Earth trying to operate around the moon and just learning again how to do that. We did it 50 years ago in Apollo for a brief period of time, but relearning all that is a huge part of Artemis II. And then the second half of that question that you asked, what do I look forward to? Well, first thing I look forward to is Jeremy. He and I got hired together in 2009. He's a Canadian astronaut. He has yet to be in space. I can't wait for the main engines to cut off and look at the smile on his face when he's looking down at Earth from SLS puts us into a 1,200 nautical mile orbit. So just to see that whole Earth below us, which I have never seen, even from space station, 250 miles up. And then going out to the moon, doing that translunar injection burn and knowing that we're going to the moon and being there with Victor and Christina and Jeremy and just seeing the moon approach, watching them looking at the moon, seeing what emotions comes from their whole lives like built up in this moment. I just can't wait to see what that feels like as a human, just to all of that emotion. It's going to be really powerful.
Amazing. What subjects did you study in school that helped you get into NASA, and what advice would you give to young people who want to work in the industry when they're older?
It's the advice I always give is you have to follow your heart, your dreams. You have to find the thing that you're passionate about, that you're good at, that you love doing. I love flying aircraft. Some of my friends love being trauma surgeons. They love being teachers or veterinarians. They love being engineers, scientists. Like, find that thing that you love. That is the most important part. Don't live your life because you are trying to fit your life into what you think an astronaut is. An astronaut is someone who is a good team player, who is passionate about what they do, and can succeed in an academic world. Like, why do we look so much at your undergraduate degree, your graduate degree, and PhD? I don't have a PhD, but why do we look at that? Because we want to know that you can tackle all challenges. Can you go out and survive a hiking trip? Can you work in a small team? And can you handle a tough academic program and succeed? So that is what we're really looking for, that whole well-rounded thing. For what courses to study, I think it's always great to expand your mind in math. I think it's great to expand your mind in art and literature. I think it is also really important to know how to communicate clear and concise messaging when the details are extremely complicated. So well-rounded, there's just no substitute for that. If you love to dance, take a dance class and take an engineering class at calculus-based physics and really start to see how the whole world comes together and then express all of that in dance. Like, wow, that's perfect.
Amazing. You kind of talked about these kind of little things, kind of, would you say problem solving is a large bit of going to space, and what kind of problem solving will you need to do on your way to the moon?
That's a great question. Do we need to problem solve? Absolutely. First, you need to recognize that you have a problem, and then you need to not panic that you have a problem. And then almost always, so why do we train so much as astronauts? We train so much as astronauts so that if something goes wrong, we see all those signatures and we know what we can do to try to fix it. How can we enable mission success? But we can't fix everything and we can't problem solve everything. So knowing how to communicate what is going on where you are with the ground team, with our flight controllers, these people are geniuses and they know every system all the way down to the tiniest detail. And so how we all work together as we're going out around the moon and coming home, like that is the ultimate teamwork right there. That's the problem solving cog. If we're up there on Orion trying to solve problems ourselves and we're not communicating well with the teams on the ground, we'll be out of sync. And that's very dangerous for the entire mission. So bringing everybody together, trying to figure out a good way to solve it, having ground give us recommendations, and then us looking and seeing, yeah, we think that makes sense from where we are, and then implementing and going. I think that's like the ideal situation.
Amazing. One other kind of question that popped into my head just now. A big part of the Artemis program is kind of sharing kind of the inspiration of going back to the moon. How is the crew doing that? And I know you're planning on taking lots of pictures. Kind of what kind of things are you doing to bring that enthusiasm back to Earth?
We are feeling the enthusiasm. We've been over to Europe, we've been to Canada, and we've crossed the US a few times, and the enthusiasm is there in huge ways. I lost count of how many countries have signed the Artemis Accords. But it's well over 30. It might even be approaching 40 countries right now. Like the hunger is out there for cooperative human space exploration into deep space. So that's been very almost liberating to see. Like people really want this. Having the world come together for a common goal is pretty important right now. But then for how are we going to share this during the mission? We will have dedicated public affairs time every day where we'll be doing interviews from Orion, hopefully live interviews. We will have 2 powerful cameras. We'll be taking as many pictures as possible, but then really just being ourselves, trying to, like, when Victor, Christina, and Jeremy talk, if you ever get a chance to talk to them, like they're just magnetic people. You just want to listen to them go. And oftentimes just sitting back and listening to Victor talk about life it's one of my favorite pastimes. So just bringing a little bit of ourselves into this mission, making it personal, letting people know that we're 4 people, just like the 7 billion on Earth, and we're heading out to the moon, and we're going to try to share it as realistically as possible. We've talked about when we get on the far side of the moon and you have that magical moment, what is our speech going to be, or what are our prepared thoughts going to be? And we've all agreed, we don't want to go with that. We don't want to go with prepared thoughts because we want that moment, the magic that we feel, we want to communicate that without any sort of pre-thought, predisposition. So we'll see how it goes. It should be fun.
Amazing. And do you think the kind of the inspiration and the enthusiasm is the same for Artemis as it was for Apollo?
I wasn't around for Apollo. I don't think you were either, looking at you, Felix. I have to think that it's so hard for me to judge. Like Apollo there was global pride. I've seen, like, it was most watched television broadcast in history. Like the entire planet was interested in this. I feel like the difference right now on Artemis is the entire planet is a part of this, and bringing together as many different countries and peoples and cultures as we can, and putting all of us together on a journey to the moon and then on to Mars, and then beyond Mars, like that's the only way we're going to succeed in all of this. So I do feel like everybody on planet Earth should feel as though they're a part of this or they can be a part of this. I think that would be a wonderful thing.
Amazing. What's your plans for the future beyond Artemis 2? Do you think you'll ever be able to come back to the moon and land on the moon and do scientific research on the moon?
My crew, we talk about this all the time. First things first, we got to fly a successful Artemis 2. Then after that, I think all of us have agreed the place I want to be most when Artemis 3 lands on the moon, I'm looking at it right now at my window, is the Chris Kraft Control Center, Mission Control over there. And I want to be playing some part in my peers walking on the moon. Way down the road, if every single astronaut in this office has walked on the moon, then hopefully I would be in line to go. But there's no way. I have this amazing opportunity. And there's a lot of other wonderful astronauts here. So hopefully my crew will go fly Artemis 2, and then we'll be a part of watching our friends go walk on the moon in Artemis 3 and beyond.
Amazing. And you kind of talked about just now kind of helping out with other crewmates on Artemis 3 when they land on the moon. Do you think will you be there to kind of guide them through the launch process that you've already been through?
We will probably, there's always nuance that we will hand down. But really what we strive for in the astronaut office is not, you don't want to put your arm around somebody and tell them, here's how it's going to be. You want to inform the training team and let the training team train the next crew on what this mission is going to be so that they can execute. But it's going to sound a little weird. It's not really the answer to your question, but I don't want to tell the next crew how to feel or I want the next crew to go and put their personality in this, and they will discover things that I never even thought were possible to discover. So I love that individuality. So we'll come back, we'll feed all this into the training team. And if somebody has a question, we'll dive on it. Like, I can't wait to watch more people fly on this vehicle.
That's an amazing answer. Thank you. So I've got a few questions here from my subscribers who've sent in a few questions. Luke wants to know, what do you foresee as the greatest benefit of the Artemis program going forward?
We could sit here and hypothetically judge what we think will be the benefit, but the International Space Station, I think at the end of the day, one of the primary benefits is just the international cooperation, people coming together and achieving this huge success story of 24 years now in low Earth orbit, and the thing's still going strong. So what will Artemis ultimately bring us? Are we going to cure cancer? Gosh, I wish. I have a lot of ties to that disease, and I wish we could, but it's probably not going to do that. But it is probably going to discover a lot about Earth, the moon, our solar system. Why are we here? How are we here? Those sorts of things will be discovered. And then we are going to discover, how do we start to work 250,000 miles away from Earth? How do we resupply that? How do we even work that manifest to get all of that going? How do we work with our private industry partners like SpaceX, Blue Origin, to launch these vehicles when we're launching our own government vehicles? Like all of that, how we all play together, I think will be a lot of efficiencies will be gained, and we will learn a lot from that.
Amazing. Ross wants to know, what are the key similarities and differences in your preparations as commander for Artemis 2 compared to your preparations for Expedition 40/41 aboard the ISS?
It's actually a really good question. No one's asked me that. I'll try to be succinct. The big thing for training for a long duration space flight to the International Space Station is, as you train, you are training knowing you have an entire team on the ground, and they can just-in-time training, they can send up videos, you can pretty much learn as you go on the International Space Station. And when you get to the International Space Station, there's a crew on board already that can help show you the way a little bit, so we can do some turnover of, ground wants you to store the Ziploc bags here, but it's much easier to store them. Just little nuances. We're the first crew to fly this, and there's times where we're not going to have comm for 45 minutes with the ground, and we don't have the bandwidth that we have on the International Space Station. So this is much more autonomous, learning the vehicle deeply, knowing when you get comm, how to communicate with the ground team so that we're all synced up as we're going out to the moon. It just feels a lot different. It's a lot more focused on really operating the spacecraft from the top to the bottom.
Amazing. Andrew wants to know, how long do you study the launch vehicle, and what level of detail do astronauts need to understand about their ride?
We think we're studying it to the complete and utter nut and bolt, full detail. But every time one of our flight controllers teaches us a class, they always say, like, this is a top level schematic, and it feels like you're learning everything. But the level that our flight controllers learn it to is, it's mind boggling. The way I like to think of it is, if there is a switch or a valve or a piece of equipment that we can operate to control this spacecraft, we need to know everything about it. But there's stuff that's happening in the background that we can't touch, we can't affect as humans, because it's operating within the structure of the vehicle. Then, it's good to know what is happening, but there's nothing that we can do to fix it. So there's really nothing we need to worry about from our side. That's for ground control teams.
Amazing. Nicole wants to know, being that you are commander of one of the most prestigious missions in decades, traveling back to the moon, how do you want to be remembered?
Wow, have not thought about that question very much, but I would say my general answer, the thing that I most think about are my two kids. I have two daughters. They're now 15 and 18. And I just want to be their dad. Like, if I can succeed at being their dad and they can be good citizens of planet Earth as they grow up, my life is complete. On the flying Artemis II side, I am flying with Victor, Christina, and Jeremy. My entire job is to take care of those three people, and they don't need me to take care of them. But my entire job is to try to be a good crewmate and take care of them and protect this crew as best as we possibly can. And if I can do those things, if I can be a good dad to my kids and I can be a good crewmate with my crew, mission accomplished.
Amazing. Kind of adding on to your question there, your answer there about kind of keeping your crew safe. How does your role as commander differ from the roles of your other three crewmates, and what's the same between them as well?
That's up to me, and that's up to us. And you would treat the mission differently depending on what it is. If I was the commander of 3 rookies going to the International Space Station, it would be a totally different feel. I would take on more of like a safety oversight, trying to explain what is going on as we're going through all of these things. I'm flying with the people who have the same experience as I do. Every bit of the training is the same. They've all flown. They're brilliant people. And so this, we treat completely different. To me, this is a very collaborative mission. I want to make sure everybody has a very significant role in this journey that we're doing, because everybody's voice really matters. And I want to see all the different feelings and emotions that come through as we go. So really, I feel like my job as a commander of this mission is actually just to step back and let the others shine and try to make sure we're being collaborative at all walks of life. Anytime I hear anything trying to get shut down or siloed, my goal is to just bring that right back. We all need to be experiencing the spacecraft at the same time.
Amazing. David would like to know, what are your thoughts on the Orion spacecraft, and how does it compare to your previous flight on Soyuz?
Wow, they both ride up on a rocket and they both land under a parachute, and that's about where the similarities. And Orion, first of all, I can't say enough good things about the Soyuz that I flew to the International Space Station. Magnificent vehicle, very reliable, tried and true, many loads of redundant systems. Orion, the difference there is Orion is built for deep space. You just feel it when you're in it. You feel it when you're operating. It has layers of redundancy on the computer systems. It almost feels complicated in its layers of redundancy because it just wants to take care of its crew so badly. So the layers of redundancy in the computer systems they're mind-boggling. They're wonderful. And then it's a larger spacecraft. It's built to house a crew of 4 for 20 plus days and to be fairly comfortable. And then it really is built to be completely autonomously operated. Really less moon and more like going to Mars. How would you operate this vehicle? So all the systems are built on what I call authority to proceed. So before Orion does anything, it asks the crew, are you ready to go? We have a burn coming up in 1 hour. Do I, Orion, have the authority to proceed with this burn? And we say, yes, you can proceed. And then it starts running its automation. Before I enter any input, it has this authority to proceed. Like, okay, here's everything that's going to happen at this input. Are we good to go? Yes, we're good to go. So it's a neat way to think about, especially if you have a long communication delay with the ground, making sure that the vehicle is telling you what it needs and that you're enabling every step of the vehicle to perform.
Amazing. And you talked about kind of Orion keeping you safe for 20 plus days. How long, can you kind of walk me through kind of the mission kind of profile? How long will you stay in Earth orbit after launch? How long will you stay in the moon orbit? how long does it take to get from the moon and vice versa?
Yeah, great question. Artemis II is 9 days. Let's just call it roughly 9 days. And I like to break it down very simply into three simple orbits of Earth. So we come off the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, and orbit number 1 is 1,200 nautical miles around the Earth, and it takes about 90 minutes. So an hour and a half, get around the Earth one time. And let me maybe be a little more specific. It's a 1,200 nautical mile apogee, or highest point of orbit, and about 120 mile perigee. So we go pretty far out, 1,200 miles, and then we come pretty close to Earth. And at that point, we do a burn on our upper stage, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, and we start orbit number 2 of Earth. And this orbit, from about 120 miles, goes all the way out to 38,000 miles. So way out there. And that single orbit of Earth is not 90 minutes, it's 24 hours. And the reason we do that burn is really 2 reasons, but the primary reason we're going to do one huge orbit of Earth is that will give us 24 hours to check out all of the systems, environmental control, life support, thermal systems, power systems. How is this vehicle working? And if everything is working great, we go from 38,000 nautical miles at apogee. Our next perigee is just under 100 miles from Earth. So from 38,000 miles, we come back to almost touching the Earth. Like you could just put your hand out the window and scrape the atmosphere. And we are going to be screaming. We are going to go by Earth so fast. I can't wait to watch that. And if everything looks good right there, we do our translunar injection burn right at perigee, about 100 miles off the surface of the Earth. And that sets up orbit number 3, which goes out 250,000 miles from Earth, out to the moon, uses the gravity of the moon to bend us around the far side of the moon, a lot like Apollo 13 did. Bend us around the far side of the moon. We'll go about 1 Earth diameter from the moon. So we won't be super close to the moon. We're going to be actually pretty far away from the moon, about 6,000 miles. And then we're going to use the moon's gravity to kind of bend us back towards Earth. And then we do 3 little cleanup burns on the way back to Earth just to tweak our trajectory. And we hit the atmosphere and come in. So it's really just Artemis II is just 3 orbits of Earth, 1,200 miles, 38,000 miles, 250,000 miles. I can't wait to do all 3 of those.
Amazing. Well, that's my last question. Thank you so much for coming on here for an interview today. It was amazing getting to talk to you. You have some amazing insights about the Artemis mission. It kind of blows my mind that you know so much about this vehicle, kind of every single thing. So once again, thank you so much. And hopefully I'll be able to talk to you again if I'm able to get an interview with the crew while you're up near the moon.
That sounds great, Felix. Thank you. And thanks for sharing our message. We really appreciate it. We value you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.